Hello, everybody. This is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard. How are everybody? All right, so what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about shamanism. So, this is going to be somewhat of a review. If you've followed my teachings or if you've read any of my books, I have numerous books about shamanism. There is one in particular which I find very helpful and is closely associated with what we're going to talk about today, and that is shamanism. I'm writing it down here for you. Shamanism for, quote, white people, unquote, unquote. Really what I mean by that is modern people. And I wrote that, it had to have been 10 or 12 years ago. And that is a book because where I was living at the time, I was living in Idaho. And I was, of course, I had been doing my work that I've been doing for years, working with Vedic mantra, yoga, ritual, meditation, Taoist, Maoshan, meditation, energy work. I had been trained by two master shaman drummers from the Yoruba tribe of West Africa, and on my other studies as well. So I had been training in different forms of shamanism with actual masters whose teachings go all the way back into prehistory. So nothing that's been made up in the past few centuries. So Neo-shamanism hit the world stage back in the 80s. And it was different than it is today. Neo-shamanism was almost exclusively people getting frame drums and using frame drums to put themselves in a trance. And then they would shamanically, through dream state, they would travel to one of the three realms, the lower realm, the middle realm, or the upper realm, in order to meet with spirit animals, with teachers, to go on journeys of healing, soul retrieval, these kinds of things. That's what shamanism was, back in the 80s. And I looked into some of it. I practiced some of it. I even went into something called Celtic shamanism, which is really just sort of a kind of a mishmash of Celtic imagery with Siberian shamanism practices. Nothing wrong with that. I enjoyed it and learned some things, but I did not, interestingly enough, I did not feel a connection to the Celtic deities. They also seemed to look at me like, who the hell are you? Why are you here? It was an interesting thing because I thought I was of Celtic descent. So when I wrote Shamanism for White People, which if you look in the chat, you can see a link to my website that has all my books, michaelwilliamdenney.com. On this YouTube channel, if you put the time in to look for it, you can see a video of me reading that book. So if you don't want to buy it, you just want to hear me narrate it, you can listen to that as well. When I was in Idaho, as I said, that was my background, and I was trying to connect with like-minded people. And the people that I was running into was basically, New Agey neo-shamans who thought that shamanism was a Native American thing. And I understand that, and I wrote about that in my book. There's a real reason why so many moderners, especially Caucasians, why they want to connect with Native American practices, because the truth is, the things that so-called Native American shamans, by the way, a Native American would never call themselves that, but these so-called Native American shamans, the practices that they do, whether they realize it or not, they think they're taking them from Native American practices. And where they're getting this from, I don't know. There's no shortage of books out there claiming to teach Native American shamanism. And the truth is, I don't know how reliable many of those books are. A lot of them are nonsense. But the truth is, the stuff that they point to, the stuff that they try to teach in those books, is actually European. These are pre-Christian European concepts. The idea of an animal spirit, an animal guide. That is a European concept. It's called a fetch, F-E-T-C-H, or the Norse pronunciation would be filcha. I don't know how it's spelled. But this is an animal totem spirit. And so you found this in more modern times. You would hear about witches would have an animal familiar spirit. That's nothing more than having a fetch spirit or having an animal totem guide. So this isn't a Native American thing. Maybe they do it. I don't. The truth is, I don't have any background in any Native American anything, so I have no idea what they do or don't do. But it's not necessarily that. This is a European thing. This is what our European ancestors did. So there's another Native American practice where, what do they call that? I forget what they call it. Somebody can remind me. But where people go out, usually young men, they go out into the wilderness in order to get a message as to what they should do with their life, or there's something that's going to be a defining message for them. And so what they do is they go out into the wilderness, and they stay out into the wilderness for as long as it takes, until they have a vision or a dream, something that they experience and they know, that's what I'm supposed to do. That's who I am. That's my new name, something like that. Something that will have a transformational experience for their identity. And this is, again, is a European practice as well, and it's called sitting out. Sitting, S-I-T-T-I-N-G, out. And same thing. And it wasn't just young men trying to find out who they are. You could be an adult and you needed to figure something out, and you would go out into the wilderness and you would sit out there until you had a vision, a dream, an experience. One of the gods came to you. You met an animal spirit, something like that. So this is very shamanic. The problem is that for those of us who are of, either modern descent, because it really, the truth is, it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is. If you're living in the modern world, you're pretty much an Anglo-Saxon. If you're in the United States or, other places, it doesn't matter what skin color you are. You drive a car, you go to the store, you've been to church, unless you were trained in some indigenous practice, you are an Anglo-Saxon. So that's your culture. Now, don't get me wrong. You want to go find out, connect to your ethnic background, be my guest. And before we go any further, let me just say something about that. I have trained not only, I've trained with Chinese masters. I've trained with African masters. I've trained with not specifically Indian masters, but people who were trained by East Indian masters. I've been trained in multiple traditions. I have connected with and have had experience with shamanic visionary experiences with deities and ancestors of many different ethnic backgrounds. And what I can tell you is the gods and the ancestors care nothing for your ethnicity. They don't care. The ancestors are concerned with one thing only, and that is ancestral knowledge. Because the truth of the matter is, I'm about as white as they get. I don't know if somebody could, unless I was an albino. This is, my skin actually starts turning pink because I haven't been in the sun in a while. I mean, you can't get any whiter than me physically. And here I am, there was a point in time where I was recognized as a master Yoruba drummer. I can remember drumming in Idaho, and I was drumming in, drum circles, and there were these two guys from Africa, and they all piled around me, and they started pointing to this guy, and they started treating me like I was one of their elders. They didn't give a shit what color my skin was. They saw that I had mastered their tradition. And that's how the ancestors look at all this stuff. This is ancestral knowledge. And the truth is that anybody, when they go back far enough in time, it doesn't matter what skin color you are, what, facial features you have, eye color, you go back far enough in time, and all that changes. There's no such thing as a race. Races are continuously changing over thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. So that's one of the messages that the ancestors have to say is drop all this nonsense, drop all this racial nonsense. It means nothing. And it's a distraction. So let's talk about shamanism. So I'm repeating myself. If you want to hear or read some of this in depth, I recommend that you go to my website, michaelwilliamdenney.com. Again, it's in the description and in the chat. And that will give you my books, and you can see all the different books I have about shamanism. But more specifically, you can take a look at shamanism for, quote, white people, unquote. So Brett Bernhoft, I can see that you're new to the channel. Welcome. This is a question and answer. So what I'd like for you to do when I'm done with my lecture, if you would please write the word question in all caps, and then you can ask me your question. I do that so that I can see your question above all of the noise of people just typing their opinions and all that kind of nonsense. This is a lecture. This is my, I'm inviting you in my home, and we're having a lecture, and when we're done, we can have a nice question and answer feedback afterwards. All right, shamanism. Let's talk about the word shaman. I will do another video directly responding to somebody's question they left on the comment, but we can sort of gloss over it here. So the word shaman. The word shaman, this is in case you don't know why Native Americans get offended. And they get offended when you call them a shaman. They get offended when you tell them that their religion is shamanism. They take offense to this because shaman is not a Native American word. It is a Siberian word. And from specifically the Tengerist religion. Tengerism is a religion, and it happens to be an animist religion. An animist religion is the oldest form of spiritual practice in the world. And at one point, it was the universal religion all over the world. And if you go far enough back in anybody's history, you will find animist religions, animism. Animism is a Latin word, and it means the worship of everything and the belief that everything has a spirit. So, in some movies, I have no idea how true this is, but it's an animist concept. I think it was in one of the Poltergeist movies, and the Native American guy is so typical. Of course, the Native American guy has to come and do something. So as a Native American guy, and he's given a car, and the car isn't working, and he says something about, no, I just talked to the car, and I asked it to work, and it worked. Something like that. And that was an animist understanding. I remember watching, this was a long time ago, these were two Native American guys who were, they're bad mouthing white people and saying, you know, that we see things differently. We natives, we see things differently. And in fact, this glass of water has a spirit in it. And I can see that, meaning that white people can't see that. That's an animist understanding that everything has a spirit. This remote has a spirit in it. My glasses have a spirit. You know, that I've been wearing them, these particular glasses, for years on my head. They've absorbed my spirit. They have a spirit. They function. The clouds, the rocks, the trees, the water, the animals, the ideas, ancestors, spirits, ghosts, demons, planets, stars, everything has a spirit that you can communicate with. That is animism. And in short, that's what shamanism means. The reason we use the word shamanism, the reason why I use the word shamanism, because that is the word that is very easily recognizable to express animism. If I say to people, I am an animist practitioner, nobody's going to know what the hell I'm talking about. Truth is that when you say shamanism, everybody has a basic idea of what it is. So even though I am not a Siberian Tengarist, and I technically cannot be called a shaman because I was not initiated into Tengarism and made a priest of that religion, I can't be called a shaman. But the use of the word shaman, I definitely can be. And any of the practices that I've mentioned, whether it's the African drumming that I did, the spiritual drumming, whether it's all of the Taoist exercises, I mean, you can't get any more shamanic than that. Working with the 5 elements, talking to the spirits within your own body, within your own organs. You know, you can't get any more shamanic than that. And of course, the practices working with the runes. The runes have their own spirit. Vedic astrology, all these things are shamanic in nature. It's all shamanism. I would make a difference between shamanism and religion because religion has dogma. And religion, when we use the word religion, we're usually talking about one of the Abrahamic monotheist religions, which, as you know, was invented in 538 BC for the first time in history. There was a literal scripture that was given to people that you were supposed to think was literal history. And it talked about one God and the exclusive worship of one God only. This was brand new, never heard of before in human history. But that's what people think religion is. And that is, I would agree with it, because the Latin word for religion means to bind up. You wrap somebody in a rope and you tie them up. It binds you. I agree. That is what religion is. Shamanism is a dynamic, a spiritual practice of dynamic balance. Shamanism is a practical spiritual path, meaning shamanism seeks to solve problems. Shamanism seeks to create a dynamic balance. The 5 elements, again, working with the 5 elements of the Taoist practice, which, by the way, I teach here, thunderwizard.com. Go there and sign up for Warrior 90-Day Challenge, and you will learn multiple ways to work with the elements in the Taoist tradition. But the 5 elements, they're not static. So the idea of a static enlightenment, that also came in with some of the new religions. It started with the idea of salvation, that you would reach a level of salvation and it would just be this static experience of sitting on a cloud, playing a harp, whatever it is. It's also was something that was introduced at around the same time in the Vedic religion with things like Buddhism. The idea of Buddhist enlightenment is misunderstood to be this static experience where you achieve enlightenment and everything is done and you're now in bliss, and that is new. That is a new concept. Spirituality, for we don't even know how many thousands of years. Human beings have been around, now they're saying 200,000 years. So who knows how many thousands of years there has been the concept of spirituality. But that spirituality was always focused on balance. First and foremost, balance in the physical world. So the first shamans, according to, again, I don't know this personally, I don't have access to this this tradition, but apparently there's Native Americans in Alaska, I believe, as I understood it, as I read this website or article. And they were asking these people, where did the first shamans come from? And it was very interesting. These Native Americans in Alaska said the first people used to just eat plants. They would dig in the earth and they would eat roots and plants and grubs, and that was what they ate, which is exactly what proto-humans did. Before people were human, walking around, before we became hunters and meat eaters, that's what we did. We walked around and we were just digging in the dirt for roots and plants and tubers and fruits and whatever else. And then he said that this Native American shaman said, I used the phrase myself, this Native American wisdom keeper said that then humans then started eating animals. And in order to pacify the spirits of the animals that they were hunting and killing, it was causing them sickness and it was causing them problems. And so they needed somebody who would communicate with the spirit of those animals and would create balance. And this is what the first shamans did. It's practical. It's not people trying to achieve spiritual enlightenment. They were perfectly happy in the physical world. They lived in the physical world. They found meaning and purpose in just being a physical being in the physical world. So their first connection to spirituality was to solve a problem, which was new to them because human beings had just started, killing and eating animals. And because of that, they needed somebody who could communicate. Maybe they just discovered for the first time, oh my gosh, there's this thing called spirits. And they're running around, and there's these dead animal spirits running around. And so that was the first job of the shamans. And then the job of the shaman, again, very practical, was to be able to, through dreams and through shamanic journeys, find out where the animals were. Where are the herds of bison and whatever else that they, horses, whatever else they were chasing after and eating. And then by the way, wolves, in case you didn't know, wolves don't go after healthy animals. Wolves go after the old and the sick. And that ends up strengthening the, whatever animal we're talking about, deer, elk, moose, whatever it is. When wolves go after animals, they go after the weak and the sick. And so I'm saying that because it served a practical function in reality, practical reality. Shamans served that same function. So what they learned how to do was to communicate with the spirit of whatever animal they were hunting. And they would create this balance because they would say, hey, we need to eat And, the idea is that the spirit of the deer or the spirit of the buffalo or whatever would offer certain animals and make a deal. Here, you can eat this one, you can eat this one. And that the idea is the spirit of that animal would have made that sacrifice. One of the greatest videos I ever saw, and if I could remember it, I'd give you a link to it, but it was a video of an existing African tribe that's, I think, the Bushmen of southern Africa. And it showed their traditional hunting practice, which these guys ethnically, genetically, as far as we know, are connected to the first modern humans. So they're still practicing a hunting method that the first humans practiced, most likely. And what they would do is that they would go hunting for whatever it is, some kind of antelope or something, some kind of large animal that would feed, the whole tribe. And of course, they're on foot, and there would be 3 or 4 of them. And they would do this. They did this weird mudra. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was their thumb or something, but they would do something like this with their palms in their hands, and they would feel with their palms in their hands, and they would wait, and somebody would go, oh, there's one right here, I can feel it. And they would just start following, and sure enough, they'd run into some, and this is being filmed. They're filming these guys as they're doing this. And they'd find some animal, and of course the animal would see the humans coming, it would take off and run full speed. Now, animals are really good at running full speed for short distances. Human beings are really good at running slow speeds for long distances. And in case you didn't realize it, that's why when you get up in the morning and you look out your window, there are people jogging. Because it's in our blood to jog. Because jogging was how we chased down large animals. And so these guys would jog. They're jogging in the desert of southern Africa somewhere, and of course what would happen is the elk or the deer or whatever the heck it was, the antelope, would run at full speed, and then he would get tired and he would have to rest. And he thinks he's away, and sure enough, here come these jogging humans, and he would take off again at full speed. And of course, this could go on for hours. And humans can go for a long period. We marathon runners, we go for a long period running. And eventually, the animal would run out of steam, and it wouldn't be able to go anywhere. And these guys, the whole time, as the animal takes off, they're using their hands and looking, of course, looking at the ground, and then their hands would tell them they'd be able to feel, because it would connect to their heart, they'd be able to feel where the animal was going. And then finally, the animal would be completely out of steam and actually having like a heart attack, because animals will run until their heart bursts. Horses are known for this. They'll keep going and going and going until they just fall over dead. And so the animal would be, on its last legs, not being able to get up. And they had a spear, and they threw the spear in the animal, but they said it was just symbolic. It was just to, finish the job. It wasn't to go in and stab them in the heart. It was just, it did something to the animal, and then the animal would know to die. And then the most interesting thing is then all of these hunters, it was 3 or 4 of them, they gathered around the animal as it was dying, and they scooped up handfuls of sand and poured it on there and spread it over the animal. And the whole time they are saying to the animal, I'm sorry that we're doing this to you. Thank you for your sacrifice to us. This will feed my mother, my children, my wife. Just know, they're talking to the animal the whole time. And the idea is they're scooping up the earth to send the animal's spirit back to the earth again. So that, again, you don't have this angry animal spirit walking around and causing problems. You're working it out with them, and the understanding was that you did whatever ritual you did before the hunt, and this is the offering from the spirit of whatever animal it is, the spirit of the antelope or whatever. That spirit is given this animal as an offering, and you understood that, you appreciated it, and of course, these guys would take this, they'd carry this big animal back, and they'd use absolutely everything. There would be nothing wasted, nothing thrown away. Bones, sinew, everything, skin, no matter what it is, and of course the meat is eaten, all of the internal organs are eaten. This is shamanism. This is the birth of shamanism. Shamanism is about practical solving problems. As we evolved spiritually, we then started to have this awareness that there were deities, that there were spirits, that there were ancestors. And shamanism became ancestor worship, which was, again, what the ancestors want is they want to give their knowledge to you. They've been on the planet however many lifetimes they've been here. They've learned things. They want to give that knowledge to you. And the idea is that if we do not honor the ancestors, we cannot receive their knowledge. And look at the state that the world is in. We live in a world that is completely disconnected from, how nature functions, and, we're screwing that whole system up. So, I want you to understand what shamanism is, and I think it's really important for me, anyway. Spirituality is about solving problems. It has nothing to do with this religious concept of shame and guilt, which is rife in the spiritual practices. Whenever you talk to somebody who talks about, I have gotten rid of my ego, I'm out of those lower chakras, this is somebody who's operating from that religion that was created in 538 BC, which has to do with guilt and shame, any feelings of not having enough worth, not being good enough. This concept did not exist before 538 BC. This concept did not exist in our ancestors' annals. Bravery was necessary because if you weren't brave, you didn't survive. Camaraderie was necessary because if the tribe didn't come together as a group, people didn't survive. The idea of sacrificing yourself and being willing to sacrifice yourself for the tribe was a necessary thing, because without it, you got overrun by your neighbors, or you didn't survive. It has nothing to do with being a good person, about being accepted, about enlightenment and all of that nonsense about reaching a certain level of purity of spirit. It's all a bunch of garbage. I want you to get rid of it. The whole idea of the 10 Commandments. I'm not the first person to say it. I've said it. Many, many, many other people have said it before me and after me, because it's a truth. And that is, for somebody who's connected to their soul, you don't need to give them rules. You don't need to tell somebody not to steal. You don't need to tell somebody not to murder. You don't need to tell somebody not to sleep with your neighbor's wife. Because if you do those things, you won't survive. If you do those things, your tribe won't survive. It's just common sense. And to create a religion about being righteous because you don't do things that are obviously stupid and self-destructive doesn't somehow make you spiritual. So let's get rid of all this nonsense. Let's get rid of all this nonsense about being good enough, about being spiritual enough, blah, 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 blah. Let's just get rid of that crap. Everything that I teach you here is practical. I don't give any rules. I don't give you any commandments. The only commandment that And I can't give it to you because I'm nobody. I'm just another person. But my belief is that there's only one commandment. And that commandment is that you live every moment of your life to give yourself the desires of your heart. That's it. When you satisfy your heart's desire, you by definition help everybody awaken to a higher awareness. Because there is no higher awareness than living for your spirit. There isn't. There's nothing. And any person, any entity, any religion, any government, anything that tries to get between you and your heart's desire, your spirit, you must rebel against. You must live only for the king that lives in your heart, the queen. It's actually a king and a queen. Your soul is king, and the energy surrounding the soul is the queen. If you live according to those energies, you can do no wrong. You cannot fail. If you live according to those energies, the universe, which is your creation, which serves you, that includes all of the gods. If you live according to your spirit, everything must bow down before you and serve you. The gods themselves must roll out the carpet for you to walk on. The spirits, the gods, look upon humans with awe and wonder, and they wish they could be incarnated because they can see how powerful human life is. The lessons that you learn under the pressure of challenges, some of them very difficult, extremely difficult, painful challenges. The gods look at that and go, oh, I wish I would do that. Every time you complain about some challenge in your life, whether it be physical illness, whether it be emotional or psychological problems, physical problems, relationship problems, money problems, whenever you complain about that, and feel free to complain, it doesn't bother me, but whenever you complain about that, the gods go, hey, I will be more than happy to live under those conditions because I know the power of overcoming that. And that is, that's being human. Being human means that we choose to forget who we are so that we can fully be immersed in this video game where there are real powers to be achieved, real treasures to be found. So, what exactly did I say? What did I call this again? I said, how do modern people practice shamanism? What is shamanism? So, the way to practice modern shamanism is to have a very practical approach to your life. There is no difference in the shamanic mindset between the spiritual and the physical. There's no difference. Whether you are doing something physically with your body or whether you are connecting spiritually with some other non-physical energy, there's no difference. One is not better than the other. Why is that? Because this world is a dimension, just like every other dimension. And you are human, which means that you are already a master shaman, because to become an avatar, which means descendant, to become an avatar in human form in this three-dimensional world means you are a master shaman. If you weren't, you wouldn't be able to incarnate. You wouldn't be able to figure it out. The idea that it's done to you is part of the illusion that you created so that you would believe it and fully play out the game. So while it's understandable you want to escape pain and you want to escape limitation, I have those same desires as well. While it's understandable, it's kind of silly because you are the one who convinced yourself that you're trapped here so that you would play the game out. So this is shamanism. And that is why I call myself a syncretic shaman, because as you've already heard, I syncretize all kinds of different. I don't care what practice it comes from. The only thing I care about is that I learn it from a legitimate source, and that I boil it down to a science. So, for instance, the 5 elements that I teach up here in the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. The 5 elements are not some idea. You go to a bookstore. I don't know if people do bookstores still exist? But back when we had bookstores, you'd go into the bookstore and you would go into the New Age section and you would find some kind of Native American spirituality book, and it would talk about the 4 elements, and then it would talk about the medicine wheel. And if you get 2 different Native American shamanism books and you go to the medicine wheel and you compare them, you'll see that they're totally different. That each direction will have a different color and a different element associated with it, which means what? It means it's not a science. It means that whoever these people were that were writing these Native American shamanism books and writing these medicine wheel things down with the directions and if they don't line up, it's not a science. When you do a mathematical equation having to do something with whatever it is, whatever science you're talking about, that works no matter what country you're in. Physics is the same. The laws of physics are the same in Antarctica as they are in Sweden. So whenever you have a spirituality that's like that, where you have these 2 different beliefs that don't go together, you can throw them both out. Or one of them is either both of them are nonsense, or one of them is the truth and the other one is some made up nonsense. So the syncretic shamanism that I have presented to you, when I give you what I call the thunder wheel, which is another word for the medicine wheel, all of the directions and all of the energies in each of the directions you can find in other traditions that are completely unrelated. When you look at the Norse mythology, for example, and you learn what world is in each particular direction, and you know the energy of that, it'll have its own mythology. And you take the Taoist, which is a Chinese spiritual understanding, and you get, they don't call it a medicine wheel, they call it a bagua, which means the 8 gates, the 8 directions. And you look through the symbolism, you find out that the energies are exactly the same. You then look at the Vedic. And the Vedic doesn't use the word medicine wheel or bagua, they use direction wheel. And you look at the direction wheel and you find that, for instance, the northeast is the direction of the highest spiritual energy of the highest heavens. You look at the northeast in the Norse mythological, what I call the thunder wheel, you will find that is the realm of the celestial gods, the Aesir. That is the fort of the celestial gods. So here you have the Vedics are saying the same thing. They call it by something else. The Norse, Germanic people are saying the same thing. And guess the Taoists, guess what? They're saying the same thing. That is the highest energy right there. They have a different name, once you look past those names, you find this is a science. And what that means is that the shamans in Northern Europe, when they, with their shamanic ability to try and solve problems, because in order to solve problems, it helps to know where the different energies are coming from and what that's all about. They came up with the understanding of where all the worlds were, where all the different beings lived and the energies of those different beings. The Vedics did the same thing. They came to an understanding of how to use this direction wheel, and so the reason why they placed the altar in the northeast is because that's the realm of the highest energy, the purest energy. The Taoists, the same thing, because it's a science. It's about solving problems. It's about practical solutions to everyday life. This is shamanism. And before 538 BC, that created a religion of politics. So the Abrahamic mythology, I won't get into it, is a made-up religion. By the way, the children of Israel were never in Egypt. Sorry, never happened. Moses and Joshua never came in and conquered the Canaanites, because the Israeli people are the Canaanites. They're directly descended from the Canaanite polytheist pagan people that lived there, the indigenous people. So they completely threw their religion away and created, or at least the elites, created a religion about controlling populations and controlling their political borders from outside countries. And that's what religion turned into. The reason why the Romans adopted Abrahamic monotheism is because they saw, because they could not overcome and take the Jewish people and make them part of Roman culture. The Jews refused. They would die 1 billion times before they allowed themselves to become Roman. And that the Romans, that's really the first people that ever did that. And the Romans went, what the heck is this belief system these guys have? Oh, they've got this monotheist God that is a total xenophobe. Oh, and they've used it to politically control their people for, 3,000 years. Wow, that's great stuff. Let's adopt that, because that's a much better way to control this huge empire we have of multiple ethnicities and multiple religions and multiple languages. We've got this one and only God, and if you don't worship him, you'll go to hell. Let's do that. And that's been religion ever since. Every army since then, from Western powers that has gone into someplace new, the first people that they bring in are the priests, the missionaries, to convert people to this really great religion that then they can use to control you with. Shamanism has nothing to do with that. I would say Vedic Hinduism is a very intricate form of shamanism. The religion of my ancestors, what people now want to call, heathenism, which, by the way, they never would have called themselves heathens, because heathen means complete, uneducated, stupid, hillbilly redneck. That's what heathen means. You live out on the heath. That's like saying the guy who lives, that hillbilly who lives up in the mountains. Same thing with pagan. Pagan means same thing. Oh, you mean that stupid farmer who lives out in the middle of the fields and has never been into Rome and doesn't even know that we have a new God now? You mean that pagan? You mean that idiot? That uneducated country bumpkin? Anyway, I don't use those words. I am a shaman. I am an animist. Pick whichever one you want. So I think I've ranted and raved enough. Hopefully it's created some questions for you. Again, this is a question and answer. If you have a question, write the word question in all caps. Why? So that I can see it. Do you see? I am a shaman. I'm trying to solve a practical problem. I want to see your question. I can't see it if you just write it. Question. I can't see it. I can't differentiate it from the rest of the noise in there. So let's take a look and see if there are any questions. All right. So So Brett Bernhoft, obviously, he came in just as I started, so he must be new. I addressed that. He does have a question, even though he didn't write it out there. He says, "Are you saying that one's ancestral line is irrelevant to what type of shamanism one can practice?" I'm not. I mean, irrelevant means that it has a feeling behind it of. You shouldn't follow your own ancestral path. I'm not saying that. Obviously, an ancestral path means that you have a connection. It's obvious that for some people, they have a destiny to work with their ancestral lineage. But the truth is that most people are hybrids, especially now in modern times. I mean, in the United States, you're not, even if you find somebody who's an Anglo-Saxon, I can trace myself all the way back to the first English people that came to the United States in the 1600s. But even then, Anglo-Saxons are descended from these Germanic tribes that came over to Britain and intermarried with the indigenous people there. So I'm full of Celtic blood as well. There's it turns out that when I tried worshiping the Celtic gods, they looked at me funny. They pretty much said, "What the hell are you doing here? We don't know you." They're like, "I mean, you can come here if you want," but they were like, they didn't know me. As it turns out, when I looked at my ancestral background, I'm actually Norse and Anglo-Saxon. So there isn't any significant Celt in me. But is it irrelevant? I didn't say that it was irrelevant. It just depends. You can look into somebody's Vedic chart and find out. As it turns out, my ascendant is in the nakshatra called Magha. And Magha is ruled by the ancestors. I have my Atmakaraka is moon. The karmic lesson when one's Atmakaraka is moon is that the world is your family. So what does that mean? It means I am a syncretic shaman. I learn from African masters. I learn from Chinese masters. I learn from the ancestors of multiple traditions. Somebody else is going to have a different thing. They're going to be set up, and their only thing may be to work with their ancestral traditions. There might be some people who their path is to work with a completely new ancestral tradition because physically they're of one ethnic lineage, but their spirit in a past life, they were of a completely different ethnicity. I can remember having had a couple of shamanic regressions. I can remember being Chinese. I can remember being Israeli, which is interesting because I can't stand the Abrahamic religions. So no, I'm not saying it's irrelevant. I'm saying there's no dogma. Here's the other thing that's important to know about ancestry. So if we're talking about, let's go back 4,000 years. Go back to, this is when the Indo-European people were sweeping through Northern Europe, and they were really changing the whole landscape of Europe. And what would happen is that even before that time, what would happen is that you would have these hunters who would be coming into new areas that, looking for game, and they'd bump into some foreign indigenous people living there. Now, assuming that they didn't go to war with each other, then what would happen is they'd get together and they would say, "Hey, what's going on?" I'd say, "Hey, what's going on? Hey, we got this. Do you guys have one of those?" I'd go, "No, we don't have one of those. Can I have that?" "Yeah, why don't you take that?" And then they say, "Hey, what can we do for you?" "Well, we'd like to know where the best game is." "Oh, well, I can help you out with that. Blah, 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 blah. Hey, we kind of like this area. We were thinking of moving in here. Well, we already live here. And I know that. So I thought what we would do is we would exchange some knowledge. And in the process, he goes, "Hey, you like my daughter? Yeah, your daughter's pretty hot. Why don't you marry my daughter, and then we will be connected?" And then what happens is this guy takes this woman of a completely different ethnicity and religion, and he marries her, and then they have a son, and the son is then initiated into the ancestral lineage of the father. So even though the kid is technically a half-breed, he's not 100% of that ethnicity. He's only half of that ethnicity. But when the father takes him through his initiation, which is what happens when men reach that initiation stage, they are initiated into the ancestral spiritual lineage of that family. That's how somebody says, my ethnic heritage, my ancestral lineage is this, and they may be of a completely different ethnicity. So that question has a lot of assumptions that aren't accurate. Because when you ask, are you saying that one's ancestral line is irrelevant? Yes, if you are adopted by somebody else in a completely different ancestral lineage, and in that ancestral lineage you are initiated into their spiritual tradition, you are now taken spiritually by that lineage, and that energy comes into your body, into your cells. Then that person, when they go and they marry their wife and have a kid, even though that kid is a mix, his cells will have in them this initiation into the ancestral lineage of the father. That's probably why, even though I'm sure I have Celtic blood in me, when I tried worshiping the Celtic gods, they looked at me funny. Like, what are you doing here? I didn't have that problem with African gods. I didn't have that problem with Taoist gods, Vedic gods, which could mean who knows what, spiritually because of other lives. You know what I mean? There's this. It's again, you don't need to think about it in such limited black and white terms. We all need to grow up in terms of spirituality. And you didn't say this, Brett, but it would be something a neo-heathen would say. What are you talking about? I worship the gods of my ancestors, even though we have no idea what his ancestors were. That's not how the ancestral lineages work. Ancestral lineages can grab you out of nowhere. These ascended masters aren't of, once they're up there, they don't have an ethnic heritage anymore. They're beings beyond this three-dimensional realm. And there are tribes of ancestors, of ascended masters that have knowledge that has never come to earth. So what happens when they see, because they're constantly watching the earth to see if somebody will have the ability to hear and take their knowledge and do something with it. And they see somebody for the first time who has whatever, some aura or who knows what. There's something about them. They've evolved to some level, where they can understand what these people have to say, and that person will have a shamanic experience, and then he'll come up with a brand new spirituality the world has never seen, and then that will be a lineage. Diksha, the whole idea of initiation, where your guru or your master puts their hand on you and initiates you, you're now initiated into his ancestral lineage, which may be completely different from whatever family you came from. All right, so I've beaten that to death. Get over this idea of looking at things in black and white limited terms. This is now the time when we are blowing the doors. The human race has to evolve, and that means completely getting rid of all of these restrictions. This is the time that the Hopis talked about, where all of the tribes have to come together and share their knowledge and act as one tribe again. It's now. We don't do it now, we can kiss our asses goodbye. All right, Adam, our 1, 2, 3 questions. So you've been on my channel how many times, and how many times have I told you how to do this? And you're asking strange questions. So I'm this close to blocking you just because you're asking strange questions. You're not listening to me, paying attention. So I don't know how to respond to that. Adam, question. Are you able, let's see what he says. Adam, are you able to channel spirits? Adam, welcome to my channel. You're obviously new because I've never talked about that. Am I able to channel spirits? Who cares? I have an answer. It's in my head. And I don't believe that me telling you the answer to that question will help you. So instead of asking me about me, why don't you ask me a question that will help you? And the best way to do that is to spend time on my channel, watch my videos, find out what I teach. And if you ask questions about things that I teach, I will be very motivated to answer those questions. And my only desire is to help you. I have no interest in trying to show people how much I know. If I had that ability of channeling spirits, so what? Means nothing. So, my answer to you is, why don't you ask me about you? How can I help you be a more productive, happy, successful person? Dennis Gilmore, welcome to the channel. By the way, Adam, thank you for writing the word question in all caps. You did follow my suggestion. Dennis, take heed because I don't want to miss your question. Dennis Gilmore, what do you think UFOs are about? Alien gods? You assume that I know anything about UFOs. You assume that I believe in UFOs. I don't know what that has to do with shamanism. Do you? I don't know. Why don't you ask somebody who's an expert in UFOs? I'm not. I would be guessing. So I don't think it helps anybody for me to just pull something out of my ass. So I can't help you. R123, yeah. So I'm just going to put you in a timeout because, man, you're not listening. Two most important things in life are to pay attention, which means to listen, and put effort. And you're doing none of those things. So we're going to put you in a timeout, and hopefully you'll remember what I've asked you to do, and then you can interact with me the way that I feel I can best help you. Vincent.thunderwizard.com says hello. Vincent is one of my certified apprentices in multiple things. And if you go to his website, vincent.thunderwizard.com, you can see all the things he does. He's a Vedic astrologer. He's studying to learn the distance healing that I teach of the lightning qigong. If you want to know what lightning qigong is, if you're new to the channel, go to thunderwizard.com. You see it right there, lightning qigong. And scroll around until you see Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. Subscribe. And I challenge you. There will be videos on there. You press play. You just follow through and do the exercises that I'm doing. And I challenge you that if you don't experience something within a month, feel free to unsubscribe. You haven't lost anything. It'll be like the cost of, probably less than one Starbucks coffee, every few days. So you've got nothing to lose. Go check it out. And I challenge you to do it and then come back and tell me that nothing happened. Go check out vincent.thunderwizard.com to see what he offers. Vincent.thunderwizard.com. Question. I grew up Catholic and was ingrained with the idea God cursed people with What? God cursed people with disabilities because of their sin. Well, first off, where did you hear that? Did you hear that from a priest? Did you get that because of something that was in the Bible somewhere? Where did you come up with that? I mean, I believe you. I believe that, that's something that some Christian or Catholic would say, potentially. But I'm wondering where you got that idea. If that came out of you because you sort of inferred it because you heard it, or if somebody told you that. So you tell me that, and then you say, this has really effed up my self-esteem. How do I get this garbage out of my head? So Vincent, I am more than happy to keep telling you the same thing. And I mean that over and over again because this is your issue. Your issue is you now are aware that you've been programmed with all kinds of self destructive, self limiting programs by your parents, by obviously your religion, whomever else. And you want to know how to get rid of these things so you don't have to feel these horrible feelings. The answer to your question is to keep doing what you're doing. You're doing the work, you're doing a lot of energy work, you're doing this stuff, you're working with other people, that you're getting counseling from, you're getting counseling from me. Just keep doing the work. You're doing it. The answer to your question is just keep doing what you're doing. And unfortunately, it's going to take time. And this is the challenge that your soul came here to do, to overcome these challenges so that you could feel your strength and your power. And I know you're also here to give that to others. So by overcoming exactly what you're asking, how do I mean, I can't tell you how to get the garbage out of your head because that's not what you're here to do. What you're here to do is to learn to live with that and overcome it and take actions that are opposite from your programming and experience the power that comes from overcoming these things, because by doing that, you will gain such a self-confidence that then you will be able to give to others. That's, one of the things that I love doing, because I've worked my whole life to just continue to strengthen my self-confidence in life. And I like to give that to others. I like to, I've talked with you, you know what I'm like. You're on the same path. Your path is to overcome your challenges so you can help other people to feel empowered. The only way to do that is by going through the process. So unfortunately, I can't tell you how to get it out of your head, make it go away, but I can tell you how to overcome it, and that's everything that I teach. All of these exercises, all of these links, you guys are doing yourself a disservice, in my opinion, if you don't click on the links and take advantage of something. On the YouTube channel, if you haven't bothered to go to my Thunder Wizard YouTube channel and looked at the playlists, and even if you don't want to pay for anything, there's no shortage of free certifications and practices. Even if you do, for instance, the Thor's belt, Qigong and meditation practice, if you just did that every day, for half an hour a day, that would give you everything you need. But you got to put the work in. You got to do the work to transform. All of my talking is virtually meaningless. Flame 160 question: how did you go about finding the origin of your ancestral lineage and their practices? I know how to research. I put a lot of time and effort into researching, as well as doing shamanic practices. And one of the things that shamans and psychics and anybody who tries to get information from the spiritual realm, one of the things that you need to do is to learn how to reality test your visions. Most psychics don't do that because they're trying to escape. Most people who get involved in shamanism or astral traveling, which is really nothing different than shamanism, shamanic journeying, I should say. A lot of people are doing it because they're trying to escape. A lot of people have actual, real spiritual inclinations and they want to escape. I'm one of those people. All the stuff that I've done here, especially this right here, I did because it got me high and it helped me get through one of the most difficult and traumatic times of my life. So I have nothing against people doing spiritual practices to feel better and to get out of themselves and all that. But after you've had your vision, your shamanic journey, your dream, you then have to come back into your body and you write it down. Write down what happened. And then you have to assume that it's nonsense. Because you have a thing called an unconscious mind, which has all of your unconscious fantasies and fears and projections. Your ego, as it were, drives that. And so you have to assume, okay, that was a really intense vision, but it's probably my own narcissistic nonsense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can prove that in objective reality. So for instance, the Hool breath. If you're new to the channel, please go, you can search for this anywhere and you will find it. In fact, that's, the Hool breath is right here. This is the video. You'll find that video. It's about 15 years old. As you can see, I had hair back then. And I'm teaching you how to do the Hool breath. If you do that every day for, let's say, 10 minutes, every day for a month, I challenge you to do that and not have an experience. If you want to be initiated into my lineage, that is the way to do it. The Hool breath will initiate you into the lineage of the ancestors that work with me. The way that I found that, I don't know that there's anybody else, I don't think there's anybody else that teaches that. And that's because, before I made that, probably a year before I made that video, I was energetically having some real problems. I was doing different traditions and I was having energy clashes. So this is something you have to know. I have syncretized a bunch of different energy practices, but that's because I know how to experiment with them and know how the energies work together. So I can create this syncretic practice, which you can do without thinking about it, and the energies will actually empower each other. But, when I was learning it and experimenting and all that, I ended up clashing and I ended up having a lot of energy sickness. And I remember having this problem. And I went into meditation, and I had never done this before, but I was desperate. Again, shamanism is about solving problems. And shamans are usually people who are desperate to solve problems in order to survive. This was the case with me. So I closed my eyes in meditation, and I said, who's ever out there, and I meant anybody, God, spirit, ancestor, I said, who's ever out there, I need a one-word chant breath meditation, because that was what my intuition was telling me I needed in order to heal this. Can you please give me that? And I subtly, it wasn't like the sky opened up and I saw the whoo. No, that didn't happen. Subtly, it was like somebody was sort of beaming into my brain, a very subtle feeling and image of the Hool breath, which I write about in detail here, telling you exactly what it is, how the energy works, what the focus is, and how to do the technique. And I did it, and immediately my energy was balanced, immediately. And I went, holy crap. I just got something from the ancestors. Now, I didn't know what Hool, H-U-U-L, I didn't know what that was. I assumed that it was Vedic because I had been working with Vedic mantra and chanting to Vedic deities. So I assumed that the ancestors that gave me that were Vedic Hindu masters. So I looked everywhere, in books, online, I looked everywhere for Hool, that sound. I couldn't find it. There is the sound Hu, which in the Taoist tradition is one of the sounds for the earth element. So I went, oh, that makes sense, the earth. You can also find it in, I believe it's in the Sufi tradition. They use that sound. There's a cult that actually stole it and they mispronounce it. They call it Hu, but it's not Hu, it's Hu. And they do that. But the L sound at the end, I'd never seen that. I'd never heard it. I didn't know where the hell that came from. But that was that putting the L syllable after the who sound was actually what grounded the energy and got rid of all of the heat and the headaches that I was having. That L was absolutely necessary, that syllable. And so one day I stopped trying to look for it in all these different places, and I just happened, again, this was like 15 years ago. I just went on to some search engine and I just typed in HUL. And you would be surprised what came up was that was one of the names for the goddess of Northern Europe known as Hole or Hulda. And then I researched that, and I researched that name Hul. And that has an association with the goddess Kali. It has an association with a very ancient Indo-European word, khol, which means to cover in the earth. And then that made the sense because I had already had a shamanic journey where I went back into a cave somewhere in Northern Europe. It felt like it had to have been 30,000 years ago. And there were people there, and they were chanting this with fire, and there was all these cave paintings on the wall, and they were chanting Hul. And I'm like, what the heck am I looking at here? And they didn't look anything like me. Ethnically, they had different skin color, but I knew they were my ancestors. Now, all of that was just some visions that I had, but it wasn't until that I did the research that I saw I couldn't have made this up. So anybody who does any kind of spiritual visionary practice, you have to assume that whatever you saw was nonsense, and then you have to go and try and disprove it. Try and debunk it. Oh, you know what? I was watching that show the other night on television and I dreamt about it. Oh, that's right. You have to, just like, ghost hunters, you have to try and debunk it. And then when you can't debunk it and something comes up that shows you some evidence that I could not possibly have made this up, then you have some indication that you've received an honest, to goodness, spiritual vision from the ancestors. So how did you go about finding the origin of your ancestral lineage and their practices? So Flame, you don't have to do what I did. You can do whatever you need to do to connect to your ancestors. You don't need me to do that. And you don't have to do what I did. And as I said earlier, you don't even have to do that. Just connect to the ancestors. Whoever comes to you is whoever comes to you. I came straight out of Christianity, and the first place that I ran into was working with esoteric Taoist masters. You work with whoever comes to you. Those are the ancestors that want to work with you. So you don't have to have any special tips on how to do it. You just have to have an honest desire. And you put it out there. Take a walk. I've done this before. And just talk to the sky and the trees and say, hey, who's ever out there, can you please guide me to my next teacher? Guide me to my next practice. And I guarantee you something will happen. Something will pop up in your life. I guarantee it. Whether it's me, whether it's somebody else, you'll find out. So that's my tip for you. Just listen to your heart and follow that. I already asked, somebody asked a question about, so Dennis Gilmore, are you asking me this a second time? You are. So I'm answering that question. I'm not a ufologist. I'm not an expert in UFOs. I have some thoughts, possibly an experience, but I don't think I could be helpful to you. And that's not what we focus on this channel. So I can't help you with that. What else? Okay, let's see. Yeah, see, I have to scroll through all this stuff that's not questions. That's why I ask people not to do that. Wait, I got to get rid of some spam here. Okay, so we got rid of the spam bot. Spectrum of life question. I have K2 conjuncting Mars in my 10th house. Does this mean I have to let go off my career since my career life, since it's an illusion indicated by K2? Well, that's an understandable conclusion. I would need far more information. That's not enough information. Your K2 is in your 10th house, which definitely means that you're not somebody that cares about the office, which means that your Rahu is in your 4th house, which means that you really want to be at home. You don't want to be out at work, you want to be at home. But Rahu and Ketu conjunct in your 10th house, here are the things that you need to find out. You need to find out, I mean, again, you haven't told me anything. You haven't told me what sign it's in. You haven't told me, all kinds of stuff that I would need to know. You haven't told me what's in your 5th house. You haven't told me so many different things, which you would have to know. What is the ascendant of your D9 chart? All that kind of stuff. Here's what I would research if I were you. First thing I would research is I would find out which one of those two, K2 or Mars, has the lowest number of degrees. Because the planet that has the lowest number of degrees is the dominant one in the conjunction. So for instance, if it's K2, that means K2 is sitting in the chair of the soldier, which can be pretty intense. That's like, that would be, that would be a terrorist, bomber, suicide bomber. Because K2 says, I don't believe in my life, I'm a warrior, I'm going to blow myself up and take everybody with me. That's an extreme example. I'm not saying it has to be that. So I would find out which one of those has the lowest number of degrees. And then I would find out what nakshatra it's in. So do some research and find that stuff out. The easiest thing to do is to get a reading with a qualified Vedic astrologer. And if you want to do that, you can go to astrology.thunderwizard.com, and you will see many astrologers. And by the way, if somebody wants me to certify you in the astrology that I do and give you a website, give you a website on my website, and if you want me to promote you on the live stream, which if you show up on the live stream, like I did with Vincent, I will do with you. You can go to thunderwizard.com. Lockdown.thunderwizard.com. Okay, what else? Baba Junzo, question. Do you have any tips on how a teacher should name a new animist lineage? Nope. Why would I? How would I have a tip on that? If you have connected with ancestors that are giving you, it sounds like you're talking about yourself, that you are a teacher and that you have a new animist lineage, which means that you're working with some ancestral masters who are giving you something brand new. What are you asking me for? Ask them. And if you're working with them so much so that you're now a new lineage holder and you have access to the ancestral masters, well, again, why are you asking me? How am I going to know? Ask them. Okay, what else? Dennis Gilmore. Oh, first, let me get rid of some spam. Dennis Gilmore, question. Anyway, I mean that in a kind way, Baba Junzo. It comes off like you're trying to, I got to be honest with you, it comes off like you're trying to puff your chest out and show everybody how cool you are. If that's an honest question, I'm supporting you. If you really are that powerful of a shaman, which there's no reason why you shouldn't be asking me these questions. You have a direct access to the ancestors. And by the way, everybody does. Like I said, if you don't know where to go next, go walk in the trees. I live in now my new place, I live in your typical suburban neighborhood, but there are trees lining it. You can take a walk down the street and connect to the trees in the sky and say, who's ever out there, show me what's next. Show me my next practice, my next teacher, my next, and I guarantee you they will talk to you in some way. Dennis Gilmore, question. All right. So, Dennis, are you new to my channel? You strike me as you're new to my channel. So, one of the things that starts annoying me is when people keep asking me about things I don't teach. So, you don't realize it, but it's disrespectful to me because I've already told you I don't have the answer to those questions. And you're telling me I don't want to research what you teach. I don't want to sit and take the time to learn what you teach. I have my thing I want to talk about. And it's disrespectful and it's distracting. So, having said that, let me read it. Question, if not UFOs, then how about something more down to earth? Do you think COVID-19 is New World Order psyop to condition worldwide takeover of all right and fascist states? So I've talked about that already. If you want to go to my channel that I speak uncensoredly about, which I can't do on this channel. So don't ask me about stuff that's going to get me deplatformed, please. I can't talk about that. If you want to, you can go to bitchute.com, bitchute.com, look for Thunder Wizard, or you can go to Odyssey, odyssee.com, look for Thunder Wizard, and I have uncensored videos about that topic. Vincent.thunderwizard.com, I heard it from a priest. Well, what a horrific priest that is. I mean, I don't know, maybe he's a perfectly nice person, he's doing his best, but what a horrific religion that a priest would say to somebody, oh, that's because you sinned, or your ancestors sinned, you're an evil, bad person. It was a horrible thing to say. I'm sorry that that happened to you. And yeah, do some work to get rid of that garbage. Again, here's another, and these bots, these are really bothersome to me. All right. Oh, there's another one. Holy crap, they just keep coming. Dennis Gilmore, question. No is about COVID. What do you mean? Question. The question was about COVID-19. Okay, so I already answered that. Don't ask me stuff that's going to get me deplatformed. I can't talk about it on this channel. Dennis Gilmore, question. Do you think COVID... Okay, all right. That's the second time you're asking me the same thing, so I already answered that. Flux Pavilion, honest feeling. I've been doing more Maoshan practice. So in case you don't know what that is, maoshan.thunderwizard.com. The most powerful energy shamanic practice I have ever encountered. I have shared these practices and the lightning qigong, the celestial qigong, by the way, in case you guys want, there's another which I'm integrating into the lightning qigong. You can go to celestialqigong.com, I'm pretty sure. Excuse me. The Maoshan is the most powerful energy practice I've ever come across. In fact, I challenge you to find a more powerful one. The energy vibration is of an extremely high vibrational nature, which is, of course, the lightning energy, which again is a power within the body that is of such a high vibration. It's not Kundalini, it's not Chi, but I have either throughout the years, either through the celestial qigong, which as now I've come to realize is actually part of the lightning qigong practice, the lightning qigong and the Maoshan. Whenever I have taught this to people, and they've been either people who've gotten the video practices and done it, or people who I've trained in person who were masters of Tai Chi, Qigong, Kung Fu, they come and they learn this, even if they've been a Qigong master, they will come back and say, I have never experienced energy of this vibration ever. This is the most powerful practice I've ever come across. That's been my experience, and it's been the experience of numerous masters that have either learned directly from me or learned the practices like you do. So, Flex Pavilion says, I've been doing more Maoshan practice and walk my dog after. Lately, I've been running into the same lady after my energy practices. This makes me feel suspicious and surprised. I don't know how to help you with that. Soundlifter Moondrop, if you write the word question in all caps, I'll see it. So please do that. Question, can the whole breath be done on a standing position? Yes. Same thing, you stand, you learn how to do what's called a jong, which is I teach you how to do it, where you slightly bend the knees and you slightly tuck the tailbone in. Don't overdo it. It's a very slight thing, but it's as though you're sitting on a bar stool. So you stand as though you're sitting on a bar stool, and you have that same posture with your hands down to the sides, your palms facing the earth. Yes, you can definitely do it standing. I teach that all over the place. I don't know why you haven't seen that, but it's in multiple places all over the net. Again, these links are here. Please use them. So, to answer your question, yes, you can do it standing. Okay. Who's Dennis? Oh, Dennis. Yes, I agree. Dennis is trolling a little bit. All right, that's it. I don't have any other questions on here. Dennis, you're right. I have mentioned that before, and I've taken a lot of those videos off because I don't want to lose. Unfortunately, I need YouTube in order to have a functioning business, so I can't be deplatformed. I can't afford it. But you can go to those other places to hear me talk about it uncensored. That's it. Nothing else? Nothing else. No other questions. So I've done all of the sales that I can do. Now is the time to subscribe because it's the beginning of the month. So whenever you subscribe, you will get charged for that month. So now's the time to do it. As each day that goes past, you end up losing days. I am going to upload when I'm getting off of this. I was going to do it earlier. I'll give you a couple hours. I am going to upload the earth element to the 5-element Maoshan practice. That will be the last of the 5 elements, and then I will raise the price up to its permanent state. If you want to save some money, now the time is to go and get this, and you'll have access to all 5 elements, but you'll save yourself a little money. Those of you who are doing this, I am now in the United States, as you know, even though I am in a lot of resistance to being here, and I am seriously meditating about having some live seminars in multiple venues. Multiple ways. Definitely, it would be a good idea for those of you who are doing this to meet with me in person, and for there to be a seminar with other people doing it, and to get some transmission of energy from me to help work out all of your postures and all of that stuff. And it's a very powerful experience. And I'm also considering doing some Qigong, doing some live interactive, group Qigong seminars with those of you who are doing that. Come and train with me in person. Again, it's an opportunity to have an energy transference, even if I don't, put any energy into you. Just because you're getting together with the teacher in a group, that the ancestors show up for that, and they download energy under those circumstances. And I'm also thinking of just having these kinds of lectures where we get together and we can do the stuff that we do, where we chant together and do rituals together, and then we can have question and answers where I sit on a large couch surrounded by flowers and you all sit at my feet. I'm kidding, but I always, love like some of those Vedic teachers where they sit on these couches surrounded by flowers and they're just, they've all the turban on and the beard. And no, I'll just sit like a normal person in a chair. But those are the things I'm thinking about doing. If that is something you want me to do, of course, reaching out to me and letting me know is helpful, and meditating on it. I'm gonna have to be convinced that it's gonna be worth my time, that people will show up. Just to give you an example, people were asking me to create a certification for the lightning qigong distance healing. And I finally did it. And I put the time and effort and I made this whole video course. And then I put it up there. And so far, only now 3 people, a total of 3 people have gotten it. And that had to have been 6 months ago. So I'm not going to do that if I don't have the feeling that it's going to, be worth everybody's time. So anyway, I'm not trying to guilt you. I'm just letting you know my thought process. Because, that would mean you guys get in your car or get in a plane or something and come and, see me and spend the money for whatever it is. So think about that, meditate on it, and throw it out there to the gods and the ancestors, and they'll put pressure on me. And, of course, I'd love to hear from you guys about it. On the channel itself, as you see, I'm putting up videos now where I'm responding to questions that I like. And liking a question means that it stimulates me to want to talk about it. So if you have questions about anything, feel free to put those comments up in the YouTube comment section. Don't email me with your questions. That will only annoy me. I only want emails from friends and students and clients. Outside of that, any questions you have on the YouTube comment section of any video you want. I will see it, and there's a good chance if I like it, I'll make a video about it just for you. All right, let's see. Tsutsayosdi. Did I pronounce that right? Got some communist thing. It makes me wonder where the hell that is. Honest feeling. I like mixing animist ideas into socioeconomics. For example, using the economy to specifically help people pursue soul purpose and desire. Well, that's how a shamanic culture is. I mean, that's what culture used to be. There wasn't a difference. There was a priest, and there was, the king, and then there was the soldier, and then there was the farmer, and, the people had their roles in society, but, that was how life used to be. And you're not asking me a question, you're sharing an honest feeling, which I vibrate with, and so thank you for that feeling. By the way, in case you don't know, I want 2 things on my live chat, which is honest questions and honest feelings. The rest of it is noise to me. What else? Vincent likes the idea of coming to Florida for a Qigong class. Dennis Gilmore. Okay, so Dennis is back. Question. I watched some of your Matrix videos. Good. I like those Matrix videos. Do we live in a solipsism matrix? I don't know what that means. And shared matrix at the same time. If so, how is that possible? Do we create shared reality or one-person override? I talk about that, and the thing to do is to understand that is, number one, get out of your modern dualist mindset. You asked me a dualist question. We don't live in a dualist universe. We live in a, what's the word? We live in a holographic universe. This is the difference between moderns. This is part of the subject. modern spirituality and pre-Abrahamic spirituality. So if you go talk to a Hindu, your typical Hindu, like, he's not, a priest or anything. He's just the guy who goes to, he works in a bank or something and he happens to be a Hindu. You go and ask him about the gods. For instance, Ganesha. Just go to him and say, do you believe that Ganesha is a real being that lives somewhere? Oh, yes, definitely. Ganesha is a real being, and he lives in whatever loka he's in, and he's he's a specific, you mean he has an elephant head? Yeah, he's actually a child. He has the body of kind of a chubby child, and he has an elephant head, and he definitely exists. Okay, so he definitely exists in three-dimensional space. Yes, absolutely. And is Ganesha just a symbol? Yes, he's just a symbol. He's a symbol for the idea of energy in its beginning. And so he doesn't have a real body. No, he doesn't have a real body. He's just a symbol. He's a symbolic energy that you tap into. And so can you communicate with him directly? Yeah, I mean, he's a real person. You can talk to him and he'll talk back to you. Is he just a symbolic energy that you project into the universe? Well, yeah, that's what all the gods are. In other words, you can't nail him down. You can't get him to say one or the other. And he has no problem with, in the same breath, saying that Ganesha is a real person and he's a symbol. So Dennis Gilmore, I want to invite you to drop all of your modern intellectual dualist understandings of reality. Drop it. That may not be an easy thing to do. Get out of your intellect. That question is a purely intellectual question. And the intellect is not at all associated with your mind or your spirit. The intellect is actually a software that's put into your brain that allows you to physically interact with three-dimensional reality. The intellect comes from a Latin word which means to pick apart from among. The Latin word to read, leggere, means to pick apart, because Latin text didn't have any punctuation. You just had all these Latin letters strung together, and you had to pick out the words in it. This is the intellect, to pick apart from among. You are asking that question. Whenever you ask a dualist question like that, your intellect is trying to figure out things that will never be able to figure out, because the intellect dies when your body dies. That program dies when you die. When you live from your spirit, you live in the space where there are no answers, and they both make sense. So there you go. You watched those videos. Dennis Gilmore, I invite you to do the work. Whether it's the free stuff or this, do the energy work. The knowledge will come. I know most modern Western seekers are very intellectual and they ask a lot of questions and they want to talk philosophy. I'm not one of those people. As much as I sit around and talk about all this stuff, my main goal is to get you into experience of doing the practices. When you do the practices, your questions will melt away. So I invite you to do that, and I invite you to spend more time on the channel. And if you do that, I guarantee you the nature of your questions will change. I will answer your question one more with another example. And this is something I've shared a lot about. And if you spend any time on the channel, you'll hear me share this story. But since we're talking about shamanism, it's worth talking about. Dr. Haleakala Hugh Lin. I don't know how to spell that. He is a Hawaiian shaman, and he's also a psychologist. And there was an insane asylum in Hawaii. And the people were so insane, they had to be like chained to their bed or chained to the wall, because if they got near you, they'd bite your ear off or throw their feces at you. They were just really violent, insane people. And so the doctors didn't know what to do. They didn't want to treat people like animals. And so they had heard about Dr. Haleakala Hugh Lin and this psychologist had these amazing stories of being able to heal the worst possible patients there are. So they contacted him and they said, would you like to come and work for us? We've heard great things about you. We have some really serious problem patients. And he listened to his spirit, and his spirit told him that was his karma, that he was supposed to go do this. So he said, yes. And they said, great, we'll set up an office for you. He said, thank you. He showed up, and they said, when are you going to go see the patients? And he said, oh, I'm not going to see them. I just want to see their files. They said, how are you supposed to work with them? And he said, this is what I do. Take it or leave it. You just give me an office, give me their files, and I will do my thing. And they didn't know what else to say. Oh, okay. They gave him the files. And he would take a file from one, somebody bit somebody's ear off or something. He would take the file of that guy, he'd open it up, and he'd read through so-and-so bit off the ear of a nurse. And if he had an emotional reaction, a judgment, he would close it and he would begin doing his work. And he would say the Huna prayer. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And he wasn't talking to that sick, crazy patient. He was talking to his lower self. He was talking to the data, as he calls it, which is a great way of putting it. In his lower self, he had a judgment. And as a shaman, he knows that his entire universe is his own projection. And so if he can change his data within himself so that that crazy person who bites people's ears off is no longer that, but he sees him as his perfect true self. His spirit is, infinite spirit is perfect. When he sees that and he gets rid of the judgment in his own lower self, that's his goal. His goal was to heal himself of his judgment of that guy. And then when he finished it and he could read the whole guy's file and only see him as perfect, he would close the file and put it down and he'd pick up the next one. And magically, the guy who's chained up to the wall, who bites off people's ears, becomes so rehabilitated that they let him out. And he can go back and live a normal life. And the guy magically heals. And when he's asked about that, and people say, well, what about, the outside world? And he says, there is no outside world. There is only your projection. That's the only thing that exists. And then the question that the intellect asks is, well, so that means I'm your projection. That's right. I'm right now you're looking at me through my computer. Those of you who are watching this after it's been recorded, you are watching a video recording stored on the servers in YouTube through your computer, and I am 100% your own creation. You projected me. Dennis Gilmore, you projected me so that I would be saying these very things because your spirit wanted to hear this, and so you projected me so that I would say it. And yet, I am my own person, and you are a projection of my unconscious. How can both things be true? I don't have any idea. It doesn't matter. It is true. So that dualist question doesn't serve you. They're both true. Now deal with it. All right. And Dorothy Shanani is saying this very thing. It's not a question, but I thought it was interesting. She says, hi there, strange, but you were in my dream giving me help on healing my body. I have no remembrance of doing that. I don't remember doing that. If I did it, and I did not remember. And it's absolutely possible that you projected me, that I am a symbol in your own unconscious and you are healing yourself and I am just the symbol. And I'll end with this, but this is what all teachers really are. Any true teacher is just somebody who is a symbol for the unconscious of the student or the client or the patient. And the reason why the Vedics will put the picture of their guru on their altar and they'll worship the guru or they'll bow to the guru's feet is because if he's a true guru, he knows this has nothing to do with me. I am simply a symbol for their higher self. That by looking at me, they connect to their own higher self and they lift themselves up to the next level of their highest expression and they live it out. And I'm just here. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm just the symbol. That's my job. A good example is teachers like gurus who buy into their own hype, and then you find out later that they're sexually abusive cult leaders who steal money, and yet they did very wonderful healing empowering things. You know, John of God, right? You've heard about that guy. If you learn about him, you find out he's a total fraud, narcissist, sexual abuser, horrific person. But people have had just outrageously life-changing healings by, you know, in the early years especially going to him. Osho. I don't know why people still follow Osho. His name used to be Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh back in the 80s. Total drug addict, fraud, cult leader, narcissist. But he has brilliant teachings. Carlos Castaneda, same thing. Total, complete fraud, narcissist, made everything up, stole a lot of stuff from other people. People that followed him and ended up killing themselves. He died of liver cancer, which means that he was riddled with anger and resentment. Total fraud. Yet some of the things, I would say the majority of the stuff that he wrote in the early years is brilliant. Some of the most brilliant, most powerful shamanic teachings the world has ever seen. And that's if you understand, if I know that he is a narcissist fraud, but I also understand that he is a symbol for my higher self, I can go back and read some of his early stuff and I can apply it in my life. His teaching on, what is that word? Impeccability is absolutely brilliant. It is a brilliant way of living the spiritual warrior life. There's no better explanation in the world. So I have no idea, Dorothy, if I healed you or not, but definitely, at least for you, I am a symbol to your higher self, which did the healing for you. What else? All right, nothing else? That's it? Okay, so no other thoughts or no other questions for me. All right, thank you guys. It's now 10:23 where I am, so I'm going to start to wind down and get ready for bed. I'll see you guys soon. And again, if you have questions about this or any other video, go ahead and drop a question in the YouTube comment section. And if I like it, I'll make a little video about it. And again, all of this stuff is here for you. I strongly advise the Warrior 90-Day Challenge. This is my latest work. And I do believe in my limited understanding that this practice, which is being revealed for the first time publicly, I believe, at least for some of us, is the most powerful way to break through the elite corporatocracy that is seeking to destroy this world and to overcome that very evil, real thing that is covering the earth. And right now, we are in a state where people are breaking out from that. So I want to do my part, and I want to give you tools to do your part. And the best tool I can give you is these two, this one and this one. So go to thunderwizard.com, click around for Warrior 90-day Lightning Qigong, and subscribe. If you don't like it, you can unsubscribe whenever you want. Dennis Gilmore is asking another question. So you say that's a question, but you're just repeating the same question you asked before. Instead, Dennis, it's good to know when to listen. It's good to know when to take, something and just meditate on it. You don't have to completely absorb it or understand it. So I offer that to you, and it makes me want to ask you, Dennis, have you done any of this? There's plenty of free stuff on the channel. I would really love to empower you to get out of your intellect. All of these questions and all of this thinking isn't giving you what you want. Get connected to some power. Go onto the channel if you want to do the free stuff. Do the Thor's hammer. Do that for 10 minutes a day. Instead of all the thinking, do the energy work. That's my instinct based on reading this. You're now repeating the same question to me with different words, which means that your brain is running and you're not. The discomfort you have, there's no answer I can give you that will make you feel satisfied. But if you experience what I'm talking about, which is what these practices are all doing, then you won't need to ask the questions as much. Anyway, that's my answer to your question. My best attempt to help you. And as always, if I have been hurtful or offensive to anybody, please forgive me. Know that my intention is to be as honest and truthful and to be the best friend I can be to you, which is, I don't care if you like me or dislike me. I want to help you solve your problem, and I'm going to do that in whatever way I can, even if that means I say things that initially you don't like. But that's just my way. So that's it for me, guys. I wish you all the best. I shall see you probably tomorrow. Take care and have a good evening wherever you are.